Friends, welcome back. I am Jason. I'm getting ready for my next big adventure, and what's at the top of my mind is forgotten items. Neglected items in our kit that we may just leave behind because it's not our knife and our tarp and our fire starter, but really important items that might get us through that next adventure, through that next challenge. Chickens crapping in my workspace. Yeah, you, get out of there. My first three items on my often forgotten about pieces of kit are going to be all had in the same place, essentially. With one item, you can solve all these problems. So the first three items: tweezers, a toothpick, and scissors. Those three things right there are really handy and could solve a lot of problems. Tweezers, I had a tick in my armpit a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe, and it was really in there. It was kind of embedded in the skin. It was one of those little bitty ones. Those are the worst because they can't really feel them crawling on you sometimes, and they really get in there and it's difficult to get them out. The big ones aren't so bad. You can just use your fingers and kind of pluck them off for the most part, but those tiny ones, that's hard to solve that problem without a pair of tweezers. And I think a pair of tweezers is kind of an essential piece of kit, especially if you live in tick country. Not just for ticks, obviously, but for splinters. You get stuff stuck in your finger all the time. I've always got little thorns and cactus thorns. This last week when I was out in Colorado, a pair of tweezers would be really handy for all sorts of purposes. Anything fine, any little tiny little details that you need to grip something with would be really good. Scissors, same deal. If you're doing any kind of fishing, nothing's better than a pair of scissors for snipping the end of the fishing line, trimming off the tag ends, all sorts of things, loose fraying fabric and stuff like that. Scissors, cutting little brass wire and stuff. Really nice to have a pair of scissors to do that kind of job. And the toothpick, obviously, for dental reasons. You get a piece of meat or something stuck in your teeth and you don't have floss or something like that. Well, that could be another forgotten item that's pretty dang handy, and you could bring that along. We might add that to the list. But having a toothpick is just, you got something in there and it starts to get a little bit irritated and sore between the gums, and it's been a few days since you were able to get it out. That sucks. That's really annoying. So we could solve all those problems with a Swiss Army knife. Even the tiny little Swiss Army knife. I used to carry a Swiss Army knife with me all the time. That was kind of my primary tool. I had that in my pocket all the time. I probably did that for at least 10 years. I had the same Swiss Army knife. I carried it all over the place. And then once I tried to fly with it and they took it from me. The TSA stole my Swiss Army knife, which is less than ideal. But I think I'm going to probably replace it. My buddy Ruben, who I spent a week with this last week, he carries the Swiss Army knife with him all the time, and he reminded me of how useful they are. So I think what I'm going to do, instead of carrying the full-size Swiss Army knife with all the different doodads on it, I'm just going to get one of those tiny little ones, that I forget which model it is. Leave it in the comment section if you know which one I'm talking about. The little one. The teeny one with the scissors, the tiny little blade, and I think it's got a little file, the toothpick, and the tweezers on it. Because with those tools right there, you can accomplish a lot. You can get a lot of stuff done and solve a lot of our problems. Guys, if you haven't already hit the thumbs up, please do so. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. We're doing Patreon, so behind the scenes stuff, unlisted videos that you won't see anywhere else. So check that out in the description or in the comments section. And then all the products that I'm talking about, well, not all of them. I'd say most of the products that we're talking about here, I'll try to put links to so you guys can find them really easily and perhaps add them to your kit. It's amazing how many parts off this old bike. This is a 84-year-old bicycle. And those are newer bikes back here behind I don't know if you can see them, but I've got some parts bikes off some much newer bikes. It's amazing how many parts are interchangeable. That's crazy that everything still fits. They haven't changed these beach cruiser bicycles in 80 years, over 80 years. It's crazy. Anyway, next item on our list is gonna be a bandana. I wear one around my neck oftentimes because, well, of course, it's very fashionable and I look awesome in it. I think we can all agree upon that. But the limits the amount of uses that a bandana has is limitless. I mean, everything from folding it up and taking hot pots out of the fire, a pre-filter for your water, wet it in the creek on a hot summer day, wet it in the creek, put it around your neck, and it's close to your arteries right here, and it kind of cools you. It's like wearing a swamp cooler. So handy. Man, there's just a makeshift bandage. You could stuff a wound if you really had to. Hopefully you never have to do that. But you could stuff a wound with a bandana. you can do anything and everything, and just the sky is the limit. You could char, if it's 100% cotton like this one that I'm wearing, you could char it, make charred cloth in a really, really desperate survival situation. Still not sure about that one. In what realistic survival scenario would I be making charred cloth? I've thought about this one quite a bit. I know we're getting off topic here, but in what realistic survival situation do you foresee yourself needing to make charred cloth? I mean, your lighter runs out of fuel. You've been out there for months on living off the land by yourself. Your lighter runs out of fluid. You lost your ferro rod, and now you're down to friction fire or making charred cloth and striking sparks with a rock off the back of your knife. Maybe, I don't know. It seems like a pretty extreme situation that would have to happen before I'd be down to making charred cloth. But anyway, a bandana. A bandana is a really, really handy, and I always recommend 100% cotton because it's the most absorptive. I think that's a word. It absorbs the most, and that's what you want in a bandana, in my opinion, because if you're using it for like a towel or something like that, drying off after you take a little bird bath in the creek, you want something that's going to absorb, and I don't like, the synthetics and stuff like that if I can help it. And it won't melt. Like if you're using it for a pot holder, it's not going to melt on you in the fire, which I think is pretty dang important. So that's my my next item on that list is a bandana. Often forgotten about, but extremely, extremely useful and easy to carry, easy to put in a pocket, in a pouch or whatever, tie it around your neck so you look cool like I do. Man, if a bench vise was portable enough, that would be another forgotten piece of kit. I use this thing for everything. Anything mechanical that needs to be worked on, you need another pair of hands to hold something securely. Or in this case, I'm tightening up this big nut that goes on there, and my crescent wrench doesn't open up big enough for that. I've got other tools that can make that happen, but the bench vise here, that is the ticket. If you can put that in your pack, that'd be the way to go. I've seen a lot of guys, on their tool trucks or tool beds or whatever, they have a bench vise attached to the bumper, which is not a bad idea. I've thought about that, but just haven't gone that route yet. Honorable mention, the bench vise. Next item we're going to talk about is a mirror. A mirror is a super handy piece of kit. Now, I recommend that you carry a compass that has a mirror on it. So not only can you sight down your compass like a gun sight sort of deal and be much more accurate with your navigation, but you can use that mirror for all sorts of things, like for example signaling. Like we were up on top of a mountain last week and we were using that mirror to signal to our buddies like that were half a mile or so away, and it was really, really, really effective. That mirror, the glint of the sun off that mirror is unmistakable, especially if you're delivering that flash in some sort of, sequential pattern that's, can't be mistaken for anything else. So that's really handy. And then again, like tick situation. The nether regions are kind of hard to check for ticks. It's difficult for you to see, or something on your back or something, in some hard to see place if you're by yourself. So having that mirror is really, really handy, and I think that is one of the most neglected, forgotten about pieces of kit. I had to cut off a pinky so I could still touch the camera, keep it from getting greasy. Tiny stubby flathead screwdriver also deserves an honorable mention. Just a screwdriver that can be found on your Swiss Army knife, or one of the larger ones, or your multi-tools. It's pretty dang handy. I mean, not just for, using it as a screwdriver, but for prying and poking and probbing and prying apart little pieces like this on your vehicle or whatever if you're broke down somewhere. Pretty dang handy, a flathead, simple screwdriver. One of the interchangeable screwdrivers with the Phillips head and flathead, I think it's the number 2 Phillips. Super handy. I mean, one of those could go in your kit, not take up too much space, and man, just the amount of things that you can do with a screwdriver. It's kind of hard to overestimate. Thanks to my buddy Jordan, I've got these scrap bikes back here that I can pull parts from. I'm trying to figure out which, I'm trying to just pull all the best parts from the bikes and get what I need going here. This tire seems to be a little dry rotted. Let me see that. Little cracks going on. And you press it, so I might end up swapping the tires out. Haven't decided on that yet, but first what I want to do is make sure this old hub right here seems to be working better than the one I have. But I'm going to take it apart, grease it up, and make sure we're good to go. Next on my list of forgotten about items, neglected items, is going to be a needle and thread. Inevitably, if you're outside for any period of time, you're going to catch your clothes on a thorn, a branch. You're going to step a little higher than you possibly should, than you're used to, and you're going to tear the crotch of your pants. You're going to get holes. You're going to get damage to your gear, your packs, whatever. And a needle and thread is a pretty valuable piece of kit that's really difficult to replicate in the wild. Yes, you can make bone needles and natural cordage, and there's natural fibers and things that you can craft and find, but it's not everywhere that you can find those items. It's not just like, oh, look down at the ground and look at this next bush and there it is. No, it takes a while to kind of fabricate and source these materials. So having a modern tiny little metal needle and some really fine thread or fishing line is really, really handy. I keep a needle, I'm really greasy, but I keep a needle and thread in my Wazoo cash belt for that very purpose, and I've used it several times to patch up my gear. So I think a needle and thread is a very valuable piece of kit that everyone should have in their gear, in their kit, stashed in their belt, pocket, pouch, whatever, just in case. Next on the list, as I reach my greasy hand into my pocket, is just short bits of string. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a long piece of cordage, a piece of big paracord like this. If you had 25, 50, 100 feet of it, sure. It's really nice to have that. But in reality, what you really need most of the time is just a short bit like this. This is probably, I don't know, less than 10 feet. And it's so useful, so handy for doing all sorts of things. All I need to set up my shelter, because I have a pretty simple shelter. I typically just sleep under a poncho. All I need is a piece of string about that long, typically, just a few feet long. But, a full pull, like a 6-foot length of cordage like that, maybe 2 pulls is more than enough to do almost everything that I need for almost all of the jobs. Short bits of string. That's all you need right there. It's much more manageable, too. You're not always dealing with tangling it all up. It's always in knots. It's really easy to keep organized like that. And you can always join a couple of short bits of string together to make a longer one. So for that reason, I think that having small little pieces of string like this is an underrated piece of kit. And there's lots of options out there as far as, high-tech cordage and Dyneema and what is it that I always forget what Wazoo uses? It's Technora. It's 400-pound test and a really, really thin diameter, which is really, really handy. 550 cord, always really, really useful. Just anything really, bank line, all of the kind of typical things that you think of is really good. But paracord's kind of hard to beat. It's easy to tie and untie knots. It's really strong, gets the job done. And you can buy a whole bunch of it for not a whole lot of money. Next on the list is tinder. Tinder plugs, little fire starting aids, Vaseline and cotton balls, something to help you get your fire started. Because on a day like today when it's raining, tinder can be hard to find. Yes, I know you can make it, you can create it, you can do shavings, you can eventually dry out some sort of natural tinder, but trust me, it's so much easier just to carry some with you. It weighs practically nothing. It's very, very light. Doesn't take up any space. I keep some tinder plugs, little fire Wazoo plugs in my belt, just in case I need them. I don't often use them, but on a day like today, when natural tinder is kind of at a premium, I would just bust one of those out and it would help me get my fire started much easier. So just carrying tinder, don't just, yes, I understand having the skills necessary to do the things is great, but you should definitely carry some supplies with you to help you along the way. We got it, why not carry it? Yeah, sure, practice your skills in the range. Yeah, definitely hone those skills and be able to start a fire without that man-made tinder. But there's no sense in a real life survival scenario, there's no such thing as cheating. Use all the tools at your disposal. Now, I think we're all aware of the rule of threes, right? 3 days without water specifically is what I'm talking about. And I think that a very undervalued, underutilized pieces of kit, with all the modern water filtration methods and backpacking cool water filters and stuff out there, I think one thing that goes unmentioned most of the time is just water purification tablets, just iodine tablets or whatever brand or you choose to use are pretty great because filters can fail, and they will fail eventually. They'll get clogged up. If you have a pristine source of water that may or may not need to be filtered in the first place, yeah, your filter's going to last a long time. But if you've got kind of it's raining like it is right now and the creeks get brown and nasty, even if you pre-filter them, your filters are going to get clogged up pretty quick. And having a backup means of making that water safe to drink, at least from waterborne pathogens, is pretty great. And they're so simple. They take up no space. They're these tiny little bottles. And you can filter you can purify a whole lot of water, kill all the nasties in there that might make you sick. Is it going to get rid of the chemicals that might be in the water? Absolutely not. But it at least gets you through the short term. Maybe you'll die of cancer 20 years from now. But you won't die of dehydration or dysentery in the woods. I never wear gloves when I work on stuff. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be smarter. I almost always just go barehanded and get my hands all greasy and nasty, but petroleum products and whatnot, I'm trying to avoid all the problems that might come down the road with that. Am I getting soft? Or getting smart? Which is it? Might be a mistake to reuse these old tubes, but I'm going to do it anyway, at least for the time being, see how they hold air. 120, 130 miles or so on this bike. It's going to be tough. That's going to be a wild ride right there. And we're going to be stealth camping kind of along the way, camping out, side of the road, parks. Who knows where we're going to end up? I have no idea. That's the challenge. That's the beauty of it. That's the adventure. It's the unknown. Nice. Next item is a whistle. Some sort of emergency whistle. So let's say you're broken, weak, sad, dehydrated. How loud can you yell? I mean, I can yell pretty loud typically. I can whoop pretty loud. And people can hear me from a long distance away, but if I've been, laying there all broken and sad for a few days, the chances of me having the energy to be able to muster up some sort of loud call is going to be difficult. So having some way to signal for help if you should need it with like a really small, I keep a whistle in my belt, a wazoo belt, a wazoo whistle. And it's really, really loud, but there's lots of different ones out there, obviously. That one's just handy. But that could be heard from a long ways away. And 3 really, really loud toots on a whistle, that is a universal signal that, someone is in trouble, they need help, we should go search out where that whistle is coming from. So I think that for that reason, as far as signaling goes, a whistle is really, really hard to beat. And like, for example, this last week when we were in Colorado, we were messing around, practicing, we were testing out the signal mirrors. If it's cloudy, that signal mirror ain't going to work very well. So you need to have an alternative means of signaling, of communication, saying that you need help. Yeah, flares and all that stuff are great. Signal fires, all that stuff is fantastic. But how easy is it just to take out a whistle and go really, really loud whistles 3 times and people can hear it from a long ways away? Oh, yeah. Much better than the old one. Those old bearings were a little bit wore out. A little bit wonky. That one's rolling free right there. Very nice. And plus it's chrome, which is cool. I consider myself a biker, and everybody knows that chrome makes you look tough. Need a longer chain, dagnabbit. Oh well, I have to wait on the chain, I suppose. Unfortunately, I gotta get a new chain. That is lame. Another undervalued piece of kit. One that I picked up from my buddy Ruben this past week that I've heard about before, but I just forgot about, you know, just like we're talking about, forgotten pieces of kit, and that's hand sanitizer. So if you are in a swampy, wet environment like Georgia in the summertime, for example, your feet are going to be constantly wet, whether that's from perspiration or just rain or walking through the creeks or just the wet grass or whatever. Your feet are just going to get wet. It's a fact. So at the end of the day, when you're laying out in your hammock or set up in your camp somewhere around the campfire or whatever it is that you're doing, it's really important to be able to dry your feet out. Now, if you don't have some sort of fire or something like that, maybe it's pouring down rain and you just want to get inside your shelter underneath your tarp and stay out of the weather, you don't want to mess around with getting a fire going. You still need to dry your feet out, because if you don't, things like trench foot could set in. You can get bacteria, you can get fungus growing on your feet, and that can cause a really, really bad situation if you don't stay on top of it. So having a little bit of hand sanitizer, that alcohol that's in the hand sanitizer, rubbing your feet, washing your feet with that little tube or bottle of hand sanitizer can kill a lot of that stuff that's on your feet, and that alcohol will help dry your feet as well and make your feet healthy and strong. Because if your feet fail you, you're done. If you can't walk anymore because your skin is falling off because it's been wet for days and days and days, you're gonna be in a bad spot, and let alone the effects long ways down the line of like possibly having to lose your feet because you didn't take care of them. That's a big deal. So I know that's an extreme situation, but you get what I'm saying. Take care of your feet, and a little bottle of hand sanitizer can go a long ways. A pen, something like this, just a pencil, whatever, and like a number 2 pencil, just something to write with, to jot down in a pad of paper, because I don't know about you, but my memory is not amazing, right? I don't have a photographic memory of everything that I encounter and all the things that are said to me. Sometimes it's nice to be able to jot things down. If you're doing land navigation, for example, it's important to be able to jot down notes, write down bearings, coordinates, all that kind of good stuff. Things that you want to look up later. Sometimes I'll see like a plant when I'm out in the wild, and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder what that is. And then I forget about it. I don't jot down the description of it. I can take a picture of it, of course, on my phone or something like that if I have it. But just having a pen, some way to write things down. This washer's just a bit small, so I'm just wallering it out a little bit. Need one more little spacer. All right, bike is all back together minus the chain. Things are looking pretty good, my friends. I'm hopeful that that back brake is gonna work a lot better than the one I locked up. That broke. Anyway, all I think I need on here is the chain. I'm gonna figure out something for the seat. I don't mind the seat. It's not that it's uncomfortable per se. It just makes a whole lot of racket, a lot of squeaking when you're riding it. And these springs are pretty much useless. I mean, maybe if I weighed like 100 pounds, they'd be okay, but it's I bottom it out pretty easy. So kind of useless. I think I just like a regular old seat. I don't know. The problem is this little tube here. This tube is like a 1-inch tube as opposed to an 1.1 or something like that, whatever the more modern bikes are. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But next on my list, last on my list, is going to be a knife sharpener. A lot of people bring their knives, their blades and whatnot, but they don't bring a way to maintain it and to sharpen it. My preference is just a simple whetstone of sorts. Easy to pack, like a little diamond stone or something like that. Bear Forest Knives has a small little stone, a sharpening stone now, whetstone, that is really nice, easy to carry around, lightweight, and it works quite well. And that works pretty good because it's important to maintain your tools. If you get a dull tool can potentially be a dangerous tool because you're having to apply a lot of force to it to get it to work. So something just to keep that keen edge on there is really important. Well, friends, I'd love to hear what you think about this in the comment section. What have I forgotten? What forgotten items have I forgotten? Leave that in the comment section. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already. And until next time, what's the worst that could happen? Let's just go on 3. I took off the old seat, and this thing is crazy heavy. I mean, that probably weighs, I don't know, I would guess like 3 pounds, just this seat. It's steel. It's got like a steel frame, these big springs and stuff in here, and this like rubber coating over top of it. I don't know if this is the original seat on the bike or not, but man, that thing is super heavy. And like I said, it wasn't that it was really that uncomfortable. It just made a whole lot of racket and was really irritating. So this seat that came off one of the parts bikes over there is really light. It just has a little split in it, but I got an idea. I'm gonna see if I can cover it with something cool, and that'll and not only will it match my bike, it will it'll be unique. Here's one of my Ulus from Bear Forest Knives, a knife of my design, just a real simple Ulu. Comes with a little pocket leather sheath. Pretty fancy, if you ask me. A lot lighter, that's for sure. Oh, yeah. That's fantastic.